Good morning. So it's Sunday, and Sunday is like, I mean, days of the week are literally just labels that we slap on things to keep track of things, right? But big picture, for me, Sundays are like really the weekends in general, but Sunday mornings for sure have always been in my life, have been times of real spiritual connection. I was trained that way from birth, and it's a great it's a huge benefit for me, and it's a great way that I now have it ingrained in my life to have spiritual moments, and for my life to have spiritual energy weaved throughout it, like through its entirety. And I look forward to knowing, I really find rest in knowing that that is an integrated part of my experience in my life. It's just a regular part of my life. And that's because it was trained into me as a child. So it's evolved over time. It doesn't look the same as it did as I was a child, obviously, and certainly, and thank goodness. But in the last several years, my spiritual Sunday mornings have been sitting in front of the water. Have been there was a time period where I transitioned out of going to church, the time period when I transitioned out of going to church, and I had a real loss in my life, a void from this community of people that I was getting together with regularly. And the place that I would physically go to feel that spiritual connection and that spiritual energy. And it took me a hot minute to transition out of that ritual and into a new one, and into one that would speak to my soul at the same level. And I ended up finding it by sitting at this little park nearby, at the time, a park nearby. And I would go on Sunday mornings and I would sit right by the water, and I would present myself for the opportunity for the spiritual download, this spiritual experience. And it never failed, would always happen. Some of my most profound insights and moments of letting go and releasing and moving forward in my energy and in that spiritual realm would happen. And I'm so grateful for it, and so grateful for my upbringing to have trained that into me. And now I would say it's integrated throughout my entire life and can happen at any time. However, circling back, it does happen to be Sunday morning, and I'm having like, boom, lots of insights. I take in content, and the people that I choose to follow and listen to are the people that the way I find them is I know in my heart, I feel in my heart that they inspire me, and they get my energy going, and they get me all like excited. And I just woke up a couple of hours ago, and I'm already like jazzed up. So anyway, I was thinking about you, and I wanted to hop on and share and remind you that I had so many thoughts. I just had this huge train of thoughts, and it brought me to this awareness. And the reason I'm getting on to give this video, this exact message right now, is because I just had the train of thoughts come to the conclusion and reminder, and this moment of appreciation that I am 42. I have been a super responsible person. I've checked all the boxes. I've done all the right things in my lifetime up to today. I've gone to school. I've been the good person. I've played nice. I've done, got good grades, got an education, was very committed to the church and going faithfully and developing a spiritual practice. Great jobs, was going into the helping field to be a helper, going into the social work field to be a helper, to be an inspiration and a problem solver, and a person who cares deeply about others and the experience and the struggle of others, and did really well, got promoted. And couple of years ago, I looked at my life and I was like, this has been a great life in many ways. In many ways, it's been difficult. My life is similar to the average, right? In the sense that I've had many good things and I've had many difficult things. And I've had a few profound moments that have moved me, propelled me forward, both horrible and also amazingly good. And I got to 2 years-ish ago, depending on when you're watching this video, and I was like, I'm not happy. And in fact, Sarah, let's get really honest with yourself. Let's get really brutally honest with yourself. You're fucking miserable, right? And like the moment that grounded me in my awareness of my misery was the moment I was at my parents' house. I had the man that I had been dating at the time had just broken up with me, more or less, had just stated he could no longer continue in the relationship because he had things he needed to work on and whatever. Amounted to him breaking my heart. And I'm sitting at my parents' house Friday night, and I am crying, just deeply, profoundly moved in the moment, and feeling all my feelings and just wallowing in my pain and my struggle and in my frustration that I haven't been able to quote unquote figure out my life in a way that would leave me feeling content and satisfied with it. That was my grounding moment that said, whoa, we need to seriously look at this situation right now, because you have been slowly descending into the miserable, this slow descent, which is like the feeling of slow suicide, versus like getting it, like hitting it, right? You go through this slow suicide process of the slow death. And I'd had several moments of real clear miserable for about a period of 6 months. And then I had this moment of hitting the wall and getting completely grounded and aware that I had to get stellarly honest with myself and really look in the mirror and be like, Sarah, you cannot keep living this same way. You're not gonna make it. If you keep living this same way, you're going to continue on the slow path to death. And I was jolted awake sitting there with my parents, right? These people who had these beautiful, amazing, gifted, awesome people who had poured their life into me. They had poured themselves into me. They'd given birth to me, and then they had grown me and raised me and poured themselves into me. And never stopped for the whole 40 years, had never stopped doing that. And now here I was confronting them and telling them I could not figure it out. That even though they had given me everything that they could, that I couldn't figure it out. And I realized in that moment, as I said those words to them, I said, I'm so sorry that I have not been able to figure this out. That I was jolted awake. That was my moment of like divine inspiration and light and like, whoa. And from there, many things got addressed immediately. And there were things that I had been putting off, action that I had been putting off, that I knew if I took these steps, these different actions that were available, that I had known about, that were in my sights. And I'm not telling you specifically because they're different for everybody, right? Those actions that were in front of me, I knew that they would move me out of this state that I was in, this miserable state that I had found myself in. I knew that if I invested in those actions, I would get out of the miserable state that I was in. And yet here I was holding on to my miserable, wallowing in my pain. And it took me the level to go to sit in front of my parents. And again, this is what I needed. It is not what you need. I don't know specifically what you need. Only you know what you need to jolt you awake. I can help you figure that out 100%. And whatever other experts you pull together to help you can help you figure that out for sure. But you know what it is that will jolt you into action. And so for me, sitting there with my parents, admitting the state that I was in was the thing I needed to jolt me out of it. Because I got to a point where I was like, you have two decisions here. There are only two options. And I tend to be still very much a black and white thinker, even though I know and believe there are 1,000 colors. My mind was so trained to be black and white. It's either this way or it's that way, right? And that came about from my upbringing and so much of the institutions that I was a part of growing up that taught it's either this way or it's this way. So I easily fall back into that, and it helps me and it hurts me. In this moment, it helped me because I had the awareness. It's like there's two choices. You're either going to choose to die, or you're going to choose to start living again. Those are the only two choices, Sarah. And when I had that moment sitting in front of my parents, it was like looking at myself and saying, you have those two options. You need to shit or get off the pot. Like, you need to make a decision, because living this way is misery. And I am a firm believer, and my life statement is rooted, the simplest statement for me that I live is I want to live the healthiest that I possibly can until I die. Because what that means for me is I will be in the least amount of pain and suffering if my goal, if my mission statement, my vision statement for my life is to be the healthiest that I can be while I'm alive. I know I will reduce my pain and suffering in every area of my life. And everything that I do fits into that mission statement. So I was jolted awake, and the outcome of that was several radical action steps that needed to happen. And over the course of that coming year, several more radical action steps that I had been talking about then took place. So there's so much here to unpack, right? And I hope for you to listen to this as many times as you need to be convicted in each area of your life that you need to be convicted in this moment. So my original main message that I wanted to give, although I've now given a couple of different ones, is that I had several action steps that I had on hold, that I had essentially been delaying, procrastinating on, whatever label you want to slap on it, had been in fear of, had been too much shame had been there for me to actually take action, too much of my ego, my pride, what have you, to describe it, that I finally got to a point, I figured out what point I needed in order to get moving, to get into action, and then I got into action. So my action steps are not for you. My action steps are for me. And what I help people do is I help people figure out what action steps they need to take to be able to get where they want to go. So when I tell my story over and over again, it is not so that you would do what I am doing, unless those are the right action steps for you. And I think for many of the action steps that I have done are meant for you. However, that needs to be your decision. So my action steps finally were able to happen because I got myself into the level of misery that I needed to get to. And then I got to the place, the circumstance, the situation that I knew in my heart would force my hand. It wasn't even like an active decision. It was my inner self that like was so desperate to get out of miserable that my inner self drove me to be in front of my parents, because my inner self knows that my parents helped me move and get into action. And like my reality being presented to my parents makes my reality crystal clear. It brings it into reality at a level that is the most real for me. So I hope that makes enough sense. Please drop it into the comments. Let's talk about it, because it's a big concept and it takes some articulating even for me to fully understand it. So the other real big conclusion here is, if you want to completely change your entire direction of your life, you can. I did. And I just had that big awareness 16 minutes ago before I popped on here, is that yes, it is 100% possible that even at 40, you can radically change the direction of your life. If you've gotten to whatever age you're at and you look around and you're like, no, not good. Not good enough. Not what I can see living the next 40 years or the next, however long you have in your mind what the next time period looks like for you, then you can change it. 100% you can change it. You are a born achiever. You have been trained and conditioned to be a leader, to be an achiever, to be a person that can do radical things, that can do amazing changes, that can have amazing influence, that is more than capable of doing big, amazing things. You need the right people around you to support you and support that belief that you can do wild and amazing things. And you can do wild and amazing things at whatever age you are. So if I can radically change my entire world at 40, I changed where I was living. I changed the amount of stuff that I own. I went from a big house to a studio by the beach. I went from having tons of stuff to having 10 tubs of stuff. I went from not being able to see how many beautiful friends and connections I had in my life to having 2,700 friends on Facebook, 2,700 connections, and being able to crystal clear see the people that were already closest to me and the amount of love that they have for me. My niece one day a few years ago back, said, we were in conversation and I was telling her about all these friends that I was visiting and things that I was talking about with people, and she looked at me dead straight and was like, Auntie, I thought you told me you didn't have any friends. It's a slight exaggeration. Of course, I had some friends, but I didn't think that I had a bunch of friends. And I didn't think that I was well loved by many, because I was in this scarcity and lack in my mind. And so I physically couldn't see. And it took my niece, she's one of the things that I know helps me see my reality. It took my niece saying to me, Auntie, you have a whole bunch of friends. You're talking about them nonstop in the last several months. And she took notice. She took notice in the discrepancy that I thought I didn't have very many friends. And then she was able to give me the feedback that in fact, I had a ton of friends because I was nonstop talking about all these different people. So it's important to have those people, and it's important to have that awareness of who those people are for you, that when you engage in conversation with them, that they help you see your reality more clearly. And if you don't have those people in your life, you need to get them in your life. Okay, you guys, so much stuff here, like jam-packed. Watch this again. Let your life be changed by it, and then take action. As always, thank you so much for sharing space with me. And you are well loved. You are well loved by so many right around you already that you can't actually see and appreciate, including me. Go do that thing you most want to be doing today, and I'll talk to you soon.